Yeah, absolutely. Well, happy Mother's Day. So glad y'all are here today. If you are just joining us and you haven't been here for the last several weeks, we've spent the last 5 weeks or so in this series called Weeds in My Garden, where we're trying to have an honest conversation about mental health. And today, I invited my wife, Chris, to come up here and join me today. And she's not nervous or anxious in the least bit, so don't look at her, all right? And it'll be fine. But yeah, we're going to have a conversation today about all things mental health and just some of her journey and how we've navigated some of these things with our family. And so if you came today looking for Bible study, you're going to be terribly disappointed because we're going to throw one scripture at you in the end and call it good, all right? So come back next week. And we'll do that next week. We're going to finish the series next week with some commitment and some next steps. So real quick, I'll just show you a picture of our family. This is us from Thanksgiving, I think. And so our son, Jordan, on the far left over there, our 2 girls on the far right, Jessica and Desiree, and you know we've entered the grandparent phase. So Skylar over there on the left is going to turn 2 this summer. Ellis is going to turn 1 this summer as well. So that's us. We've been married 32 years and no end in sight. Yeah, so.
We also really love our daughter-in-law Lauren and our son-in-law Todd.
Yeah, we don't have time. We got cut for time today. So it's a package deal. They're wonderful. All right, so there's an analogy I've been wanting to use through the series, and I think today's a good time to do it. But the analogy when it comes to mental health is a laundry kind of a analogy. And some of you might understand this. You know, tonight, at the end of the day, you know, you're going to take off your Sunday clothes and you're going to throw them in the corner and you're going to start a small pile and you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to get that tomorrow. No big deal. And then tomorrow you get busy and you got things going on and you're like, I didn't have time to get to it. And you take off those clothes from that day and you throw those in the pile. And then you go, okay, it's fine because 2 days from now is laundry day. I'm going to take care of all of it. And every day the pile grows a little bit more. And before long, you're looking at it going, man, it's not simple anymore. There's this daunting task and I feel overwhelmed. And that's how some of us, or a lot of us, actually feel when we talk about mental health. It's like one thing was fine, it might be normal, a second thing, but before long it just kind of adds up and builds up over time. And then you're looking at this pile going, it's just overwhelming. So I thought it was very interesting when I remembered this sign that we have in our laundry room, which just simply says, laundry sucks since forever. And we found this up in North Carolina last summer, and Chris goes, we're going to hang that in our laundry room because she hates laundry, okay? And it really was just a sign about laundry, but I think the analogy works well, especially as we start to talk about mental health, because this was Chris's idea to come out here today, by the way, and so then every week it's been touch and go. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And here we are, like right up until 5 o'clock last night. So we're glad that she's here because I'll say this, like our church needs her voice, and I think we need to hear her story, and I think we need to learn from her wisdom. So let's get to it. But you said something a couple of weeks ago. You said, hey, I know that you, talking about me, you know, every week is just a thing. It's like by Monday, I'm on to the next thing. I'm thinking about what we're going to talk about next week. She said some of us are over here and we're processing everything week by week by week. It's just kind of a little overwhelming. I can't remember the exact words you used, but it was something like the whole series is kind of like a summary of my life. I don't have a direct quote on that. So can we just go back to, and I was trying to construct a timeline for Chris to say, hey, help us learn, like, when did you first, like maybe looking back now, go, okay, I feel like that was like a mental health challenge. Can you give us history a little bit?
Right, so don't really, well, I remember, but early in my life, I went through a couple traumatic things as a child, and so obviously those affected me, but probably the earliest mental health issues started coming out in middle school, high school, where I put a lot of pressure and stress on myself over my grades. And that was something I could control, and my parents did not put this pressure on me, but I put it on myself and would literally make myself sick over studying and what my grades would be. My junior and senior year of high school, I shouldn't have graduated because I missed so many days of school, but I still made straight A's, and so my teachers signed off on the classes. But I just would back then it wasn't anxiety, it was just stress, and so we didn't recognize a lot of those things. Mental health was someone who was bad enough to be put in a hospital or something like that, and so it wasn't acknowledged in the same way. I know that for me, along with the trauma, there's a lot of mental health history in my family, and for that to even be recognized in my family, in my parents and my grandparents' generation, in some people, that there has to be even more people that it probably wasn't recognized in, because it just wasn't recognized and talked about in those generations.
So I think it's interesting to point out that Chris and I both graduated in the top 20 of our high school class. And she had like 700 people in her class, and I had like 28. But still, it counts, all right? So we were both still top 20. But you talk about just like the pressure you put on yourself, having panic attacks, and even going back to high school and kind of stuff. And so what we would maybe summarize as anxiety. And so, we did the survey on the front end of this series and asked you all, like, what are some things that have affected you? And anxiety was the number one thing that came out for our church. Almost 88% of you said you are affected in some way by anxiety, which means like you could literally just reach out and touch somebody next to you and go, okay, like we're kind of all in this together in some degree. And so anxiety is, and there's lots of ways to describe it, and you can probably add some better descriptors to it than I could, but it's just kind of like this overwhelming, like, I think you even say like just kind of like a constant feeling is just kind of running in the background. One of our own kids said it's like anxiety is just like the air I breathe. Like it's just like all the time, it's just there. And I don't understand that, but you do. And so there's usually some kind of a fear, an underlying fear. And anxiety, for the most part, is future-oriented. And so a lot of times we're living it before it happens, and then we have to live it a second time when it does happen or doesn't happen. And so for the most part, we're going, okay, there's something that feels like it's out of my control. And so I need to worry about it. Close?
Right. Perfect example of being up here today. I just didn't even want to talk about it because it would bring me a lot of anxiety, and I'm heavily medicated in order to be here.
I got a great text this morning. It just says, hey, I'm on my way. I've taken a Xanax. And it's like,
over the watchful eye of my counselor and psychiatrist, I didn't really realize even how much social anxiety I still had in the last few years, until John wanted me to be able to do some of this sort of thing with him, even to come on stage and be here while he prayed for someone. I had a panic attack on the way to church one day and talked to my psychiatrist about it and said, I want to be able to do these things. I want to be able to go to a conference with pastors and wives and not to be so filled with anxiety that I can't enjoy it, that I can't connect with people, that I can't speak and say the things that I want to say, because I would just literally have words that I want to say to my best friend, my husband, and I can't get the words out. And so medication has been very helpful for me to be able to do those things. And it's on an as-needed basis. I'm on other medication as a constant, which we'll talk about for depression and anxiety as a foundation. But being able to do something like this today, I wouldn't be up here without more help.
You said to me something about connecting anxiety to past trauma and just like the feeling of being out of control. Like, can you talk about that? Or
Right.
I don't think I made that up.
No, that's a pretty common thing when you go through major traumas, especially as a child, God is amazing to be able to help us have coping mechanisms when we go through things. And so those coping mechanisms are built in order to be able to help us cope at the time. But those coping mechanisms are not designed for us to cope forever. God ultimately wants to bring us healing, and he is a God of healing. And so eventually in my life, he was able to bring me to a point and bring me to the time of being able to talk about things and be able to come to healing in the right people in my life, and just be able to process things and be able to get that healing. Because if we don't eventually process traumas, we don't correctly do that, then that anxiety just stays, and those coping mechanisms from those traumas, at least, are not designed for forever. Those are different from tools that we might have to help us in an instant of anxiety.
So 3,000 years ago, King Solomon was way out in front of the science and the medical professions, and he said that anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down. And so at that time, you're talking about the heart being like the place where all of your emotions are and your feelings, and the control center, what we today would probably call the mind. And so he connected the dots essentially to say, hey, when I get anxious inside, like it just weighs me down. It's like all these things are coming at me and I can't handle them. And so, the truth of the matter is like we might feel these things in our body, but they really take place in our mind. And so there's a clear connection between anxiety and depression. And that's happened for you as well. And I don't really know the question other than maybe we can talk anxiety and depression. And there's been a lot of periods in our life where we stacked stressors, for lack of a better word. And maybe I caused some of those. Maybe they were incidental, but there were just life stressors, one right after the other, that combined with anxiety and depression just is a really bad mix. It's a free for all, whatever you want to do with that.
Right. So we got married really young, and we had children really young. And so we were still growing up. We were still processing things. And so I say the first 10 years of our marriage, I was processing and getting healed from things. And the second 10 years, it was him. So we've had a good 12 years or so.
And now the third 10, we're back to you. So I don't know if you want to tell that other story. I don't know which one, story. But I'm just thinking about, like, there's always been ups and downs in our life, and it's just like there can be this thought of, okay, when we just get through this thing, then I'll feel better.
Right. So for a long time, when you have 3 kids, when you're married, when you work for a church, there's always stuff going on. And our life especially seems to have something all the time. And we had a child who had some health issues. We had, there's always someone in the church that's going through something. You have family, extended family. And so when I would feel down, I always had something to blame it on. And that was causing me stress or was, upsetting me. And so I didn't get help for a very long time because of that.
Well, I think there were things that I've learned over the years, obviously, where even for you to go back to, living in, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which would be like 25 years ago, and just dealing with motherhood, I didn't know those things were happening, just even having panic attacks over how to be a mom. And I was probably like a 4th child at the time in many ways, so that just added stressor. But it took, I don't know how many years that was, probably 12, years until we got to I mean, the dates are hard to figure out in some places because it's like I think God gives you a graceful sense of forgetfulness at times. And I just think there was all that stuff kind of come together, and someone decided it was a good idea to plant a church, me with no money or people, in 2008 and when the world had a financial collapse. And so there were just constant stressors that were thrown in on all that. And then well, just talk about like some of the things that were happening in our family. So that the year before Jordan, our son, graduated high school, like things were relatively good. And
Right. So we got to a point the year before Jordan was a senior where things were pretty stable. None of our kids were going through any crises. They were all being fairly, decent and not causing problems, getting along. And everything was pretty, no current crisis at the church or family. And it was summer, and they were wanting to do things. I remember a very specific day where they wanted to go play miniature golf. And my daughters were coming, and I didn't want to get out of bed. And I wanted to play miniature golf, but I didn't want to go. And I was forcing myself to get out of bed to go spend time with my family. And it just really clicked for me there of, okay, there's not anything that is exhausting me, that is keeping me from sleeping. There's not anything that I should feel bad and low and down about, and it just kind of clicked for me of this something is wrong, So.
yeah, and I think like for me, like not knowing, like I don't know what's happening, and you weren't able to verbalize it at the time, but we went out to, we went and had dinner at one of your favorite restaurants together, Arby's, and which is, listen, it's legit. It's been the request for Mother's Day, just so you know.
I want lunch today.
And we sat down, and you said, hey, do you notice anything different about me? And if you've been married for any length of time, you're like, this is a trick. I don't understand. I don't know if I have the freedom to say anything here or not, but it was like, yeah, I noticed something's different. Like, you're more relaxed, and I have to tell my joke. I've been saying this for weeks, and they're like, that's stupid. It's like, but what if instead of a nervous system, we had a chill system? Wouldn't that be amazing? I said, yes, I do, but I don't know what it is. And Chris just started crying at the table, and she goes, listen, I just started taking a little something, and I just feel so much better. And so you had done that without me.
I had gone, I couldn't verbalize it to him at the time. And so I had gone to the doctor, they give you this sheet to fill out, and I marked like all 10 of the questions like on the extreme, of feeling depressed. And so, initially went to my medical doctor and started taking something. And yeah, it was just, I was like night and day. I felt so, so different. And I know sometimes people have a hard time staying on medication, they start feeling better and then won't stay on it. But the difference in me that it has made, the difference in my family that it has made, I know I won't ever go off of it because of the way that I know that I treated my husband and my family. And I wasn't an abusive mother, but I wasn't kind. And it was because I was in pain and I was suffering. And so that's what was coming out of me. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to treat my family that way.
Mm-hmm. So if you've heard us talk at all, you'll know that we're like pro-medication within, prescribed limits. We're pro-counseling, and it might take you trying a couple of people to find one that you connect with. But if you're like, hey, the first one, I don't like them, don't give up. Like, keep looking for the person that you connect with who can guide you. That's what they are. They're guides in the conversation. And then everything was magically better. Just kidding. but it's just like we're in the middle. So it's always going to be happening, okay? We're always going to be dealing with it. But we have better techniques now. We have better aids, and that kind of thing. So let's take a break from you for a second, and let's talk about kids and family. And I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can, and you can add the details where you want. But so we have one child who, in high school, suffered a traumatic brain injury. She actually had multiple concussions in a short amount of time, which we saw manifest itself in severe depression, okay? Just in your bedroom all the time, no light whatsoever, can't get up, not going to school. We literally had a meeting with the guidance counselor the senior year of high school who said, listen, all she has to do is show up for the last couple of weeks and she can graduate, and still almost didn't happen. And so that part of what happened during that time was some self-harm. And so like there was a time where we collected every possible thing we could find, knife, scissors, razor, and put it in a locked toolbox. And people had to go on a checkout system. And so we had all of that, and that probably happened over a 2-year period before we actually got to what we call the 4 years from hell. So we're talking about 6 years, okay? And so what happened in the final 4 years was a sexual assault, same kid. And so that became a thing where we had to constantly go, okay, this is clearly a capital T trauma for this child, but it's not just their problem. We're all going to have to figure out how we're going to walk through this as a family. So that's kind of like the short synopsis of that period of time. And this would be one of those things you're like, man, I would like to know more about that. Then you can buy us lunch or dinner, and we'd be happy to explain it to you. But we'll just roll with it.
Right. And we have permission from our children to talk about these things. She has been pretty open about her, about going through this. So, yeah, this was, when anybody has mental illnesses, it's not something that they are just going through. It's something that affects your whole family. And I think for a long time it was, put that person in medication, or put that person somewhere, or put that person in counseling. But it's something that affects your whole family. And obviously with a major trauma and the way that everything went down, it was a major trauma for all of our family. And so walking through that with her, I think one of the questions that has come up some is, how do you walk through some of these things with a family member or with other people? And I know the one thing that God told me repeatedly was, love her, just love her and love her. Not everyone processes things the same way, and that's okay. She was, we got her some immediate help and attention. I am not a counselor either, although I joke around that I've seen enough counselors, spent enough
You've
time and money.
You've logged enough hours. You should be an honorary degree.
I probably could have a degree at this point, but not everyone processes things the same way, and we all had to process in our own ways, and we all had to have grace for each other as we did that. And she was not ready to process immediately. And so I think one of the things we had to realize for her was that has to be okay. And we have to say, hey, we're here for you, so that when you are ready, we're here for you. And give her that time that she needs, because you can't push and force someone to process things. They have to be ready to do that. I'm an information person, so I like to read and get things. We saw multiple counselors during that time. All the good parenting skills that you might have kind of go out the window in these times, because you just don't know what you're doing in these situations. And so it's getting on your knees to prayer and it's loving them, and just having a lot of grace.
I think, going through a time period where it was end of high school, that the major trauma happening in college, and then like for us, like there were so many decisions that we were involved in, and the best thing we did was we were in touch every day. We were like, hey, this is the thing, we got to talk it out. What do you think we ought to do? What do you think I ought to do? We did go to a counselor, and we rolled out the story, and she goes, I'm sorry, I can't help you all with that one. We're like, okay, well, we'll go find somebody else who can. And so I think just staying in touch, and how do you walk through it with a family member? Well, very closely. That's how you do it. So do you want to talk about this since we're on that kids stuff, book recommendation? No? Okay, at the end. We're at the end.
And I will.
We're close to the end. We got to give a Bible verse, or it won't be church.
Okay, I'll do this first. I wanted to bring this up. This is the best book that I read last year, and
It's called How to Keep House While You're Drowning. Yeah.
I initially heard this woman's TED Talk, and it was amazing. And I've bought about 5 of these that I've given to people. It is specifically for people who may be overwhelmed with household tasks kind of things, but I also think that every counselor, teacher, parent should read this because the wisdom in this can be applied to a lot of different things. It's a really quick read, but it is just really about not focusing so much on valuing a person by the tasks that they do. And if I was stressed out in high school, I can honestly not imagine being in school these days, and all the pressures that are on kids. And it's about changing the dialogue and the culture and everything in our social media and all of it, so that we don't make ourselves feel like we're drowning. We don't make our kids feel like they're drowning, and just being overwhelmed. So anyway. This excellent book.
Yeah. And if you're into reading, or you can listen to a short podcast, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And he literally, I can summarize it for you, where he says, we have overprotected our kids from the real world, and we've underprotected them from the online world. Fascinating. So go check that out. All right, what do you think you would say God has taught you, or he's teaching you, or scriptures that you held on to through all this?
Yeah, so this was kind of weird. We were talking about this last night because I actually got sick a couple days ago. And as we were talking about it, the scripture that God gave me almost 30 years ago when I was going through a big T trauma was Psalm 62. And he said, you're kidding me. Go to the end of my notes. And he had Psalm 62. And we haven't really talked about that, but that's just the verses that he gave me, and just some specific verses in there that I probably don't have the right words for, but my soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. And then there's a part that talks about cry
I will
out.
not be shaken.
Yeah, I will not be shaken.
My salvation and glory depend on God. He kind of repeats himself a few times. And
pour out your hearts before him. That's the part. Pour out your hearts to God. That's okay to do. So kind of just the mantra of that. He is my rock. He is my salvation. Pour out your heart to him. And when I am in those desperate moments, crying on the beach, when my kids are going through really horrible things and I'm crying in the shower, all of these things I would never wish on anyone or want to go through again, but they have also brought me to a place of knowing God and a closeness with God that I never would have otherwise. Mm-hmm. I don't know how people get through life without Jesus. I would not have made it through my life without Jesus.
So Psalm 62 is fascinating, as Chris said, because she did get strep, this week, and so like it was a little touch and go. I was like, listen, we're going to do this or not, because I need to know, because I got nothing else prepared. And so like by about 5 o'clock last night, I was like, all right, I better start writing some of my own stuff down. And so I went to Psalm 62. And I was like, this is the one I kind of want to lay out for you all, because he talks about the word that we just read is stronghold, or in some translations, you're going to read fortress. So the fortress is the place where you run to and you hide because there are so many things coming at you. And he says, okay, my stronghold or my fortress is God, my rock. And in some of the other language he uses there, it's almost like the fortress is held up by 2 pillars. And one of those pillars is the belief that God is in control. And then the other pillar is that God is actually good. Hey, I believe that he's got it under control. He can handle it. I'm going to do my part to let him do that. And I am believing that what he's going to do is good, and it's for my good. And so anytime that you step outside of those 2 pillars, either I don't believe God is good, or I don't believe God is, we could say, great, then I allow myself to get consumed with worry and even anxiety. And so stand under the fortress of God's goodness and God's greatness, or God's control. So that Psalm 62 is confirmed for you by her and me, okay? So that's your scripture. Here's the other thing that's confirmed for you today is the closing song. So Chris had asked me a week ago or so, and she said, hey, is it possible that we could like do a song that I request? And I said, it's possible. Like, what is it? You know, sometimes these things are already planned. She said, well, the song, you know, I Speak Jesus. I said, well, there's actually 2 songs that have the same title. Which one are you talking about? And she said, oh, well, this one. And she described it to me. And I said, we could probably do that. Let me go look and see what's planned for the day. And I look at the service order and I go, oh, guess what? The last song is already planned to be I Speak Jesus. So this is the song confirmed for you by God, okay? So Psalm 62, I Speak Jesus. We're gonna worship together. There are several people who are going to be baptized today as well, so that's going to take place during this song. I just want to pray over you all this morning, and just let me do that if I could. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for sharing your story. It takes a lot of courage to open up and share your story, and hopefully part of what you'll take away today is, maybe I could open up and share some of mine too, and invite some other people in, and let that be part of the healing as well. So let me pray for y'all. God, today we say thank you that just, you know, by sharing a story and opening up about things we've experienced and maybe hopefully learned along the way, how we've come to trust you in these things, could maybe inspire others today, God, to take next steps with you. So God, thank you for Chris's willingness just to open up. Thank you for her honesty. Thank you for just the courage to be able to do that today. And God, I pray that it would inspire all of us today just to be honest about what's happened and what is happening. And at the end, God, just to throw ourselves at your mercy, to stand under these pillars of your goodness and your greatness, believing, God, that in the end, you really do hold it all together. God, you really do have our best interest in mind. God, you care about us, and you want to see us whole and healthy. So today, God, we pray to that end. We thank you for Jesus, and I'm going to pray these things in his name. Amen.